Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Okay, so this may seem a bit of a Specna roadshow in that I'm milking this a little bit. I'd like to say I'm giving you more of an in-depth review. So, today I want to talk about what's inside it and what's actually inside the Orion gearbox, which is inside this fella that we've looked at already. We're going to take it apart, see what it's like inside, and we're going to see if we can just improve the shims a little bit, or the shimming, grease it up, lube it up, because I've heard a few rumours that they may be a bit dry, and we're going to have a look, see if we can just make it a little bit better, sort of a pre-use service, if you like. So what we'll do is we'll take it apart, take it to the bench, get the gearbox out, strip it down, have a little bit of a look, and see if I can give you a run through of what I'm doing to make this a little bit better. And then we'll test it at the end and see where we are. Remember, if you like the videos and you like the channel, please give us a thumbs up. Remember to subscribe, leave a comment and press the little bell so you get the notifications when a new video comes up. Interestingly, on this, I've also got a really cool Night Evolution switch for my flashlight. So if anyone wants to see that, please let me know, because this thing is awesome. So there you go, let's get on with this. Okay guys, this is where we're starting. We're going to do a bit of a noise comparison, see how it sounds at the moment, and then what it's like once we've had a look at the shimming and generally lube the inside of the gearbox and see what's actually inside, see what's inside this Orion gearbox, see what it's like. So let's stick it onto semi. So that's how it sounds with 11.1 as it is, and we're going to take it apart, have a look at it and see if we can make it a little bit quieter and see where it goes from there. Okay, so here's the Orion gearbox. As you can see, it's not been opened or anything. The seal's still on the bottom of the gearbox shell. So first impressions, it's a light aluminium. We've got the quick release spring at the back here with the bearing quick release spring guide. A couple of nice little touches to see first of all. Obviously, first off, we've got the things that I spoke about in the last video, which is the aluminium nozzle. And we can see the tappet plates probably in line with an SHS one, quality-wise. Nice little touch is a cutaway here, which allows the cabling to be tucked underneath the hole that the motor goes through. And it means it keeps it tucked away from the actual the motor gear. And that's a good thing, because if your motor's running a bit shallow, it stops it cutting into your cable. So that's quite a nice little touch. Just means it's protected. Another little touch is a window to allow you to reset the gearbox. So as you're taking it apart, if you need to put something in here just to release it so you can push the piston back, it's quite useful. With this at the moment, the piston's in the back position, which means the spring was compressed, which isn't the way you want to leave your gun. It's not ideal. Because I'm not using the 11.1, I'm guessing it's over rotating, because I don't believe the ASR MOSFET does support pre-cocking, which would suggest that we just got a little bit of overspin. Not a problem for use, just a problem if you suddenly find yourself with a compressed spring and all the FPS is gone. So yeah, that's a nice little touch. So what we'll do now is we'll crack the gearbox open and have a look inside. For one thing I will mention as well, they've rounded off the corners of the gearbox at the front of the cylinder as well to try and create a little bit extra strength, which is a common mod people do to their version 2 gearboxes. So let's open this up and see what's inside. Okay, so first things first, let's have a look inside here. Now this gun has fired approximately around, I'd say probably about 500 shots, so not a great deal. It's essentially brand new still. First things first then, so down here you've got your safety. That's all normal, there's nothing should really go wrong with that. One thing when you take these gearboxes apart, for anyone who doesn't know, always be careful because shims have a habit of sticking to the inside of there, and you'll end up dropping them off and losing them and ruining your shimming inside the gun because you won't remember where your shims go. So that's your non-reversal. Looks fine. Now let's look at these gears. Okay, first things first, there is grease in here. Ironically, it's all on the inside of the actual gearbox housing. Another thing I've noticed is a few bits of aluminium flake you can see moving around if you look at the camera there. So yeah, no big deal at the moment. We do sometimes get a little bit of swarf, so let's get these gears out and have a look. Now the shimming was a little bit loose actually rather than tight, but it wasn't horrendous. It was certainly acceptable, so we'll get these gears out, make sure we keep the shims on there. It's got a delayer chip on the top there, which is nice to see. Let's get this out of here. See what we find. So on the back of there's a bit of grease, quite a thick sort of silicone type grease, but the actual gears themselves are relatively dry. Now I don't like lots of lube on the gears. If they're absolutely bunged up with grease, then that's almost as bad as not having any, so you need to keep it sensible. So it looks, you can see brush marks where they've painted the grease onto the gearbox shell. And one thing I have noticed is this piece of black something here. Now it actually feels rubberized, so I'd say it's probably a piece of, maybe a piece of heat shrink actually. It's certainly not the cable coatings because they are silver. There is a bit of heat shrink in there for a join. So so far no real worries that I can see. So this is our selector, our fire selector on the back. That all seems fine. That's not loose, that's solid. A little bit of wear on there, but nothing too worrying. It all looks in pretty good shape. So one thing I'll notice is it is a bit dry, and also on the inside here. So this is completely dry. I do like to have a little bit of lubrication there just to help it. So we'll take it apart, we'll give it a clean, we'll strip all the cables out, clean the shells, give it a tidy up. But before we do that, I just want to have a look at this. So this is the piston, cylinder and the nozzle. So let's get all this apart again. There's a few bits of aluminium swarf. So if we look at the nozzle, that is actually a sealed O-ring nozzle, which is good. a good start. It all very much looks like sort of the SHS stuff. We've got an aluminium cylinder, and we've got, look at that, that's actually quite nice. So we've got a double O-ring piston head, which is nice to see. Now this gun is quite loud. There's very little, absolutely next to no lubrication on this. It's very dry, and this is the one place where you really want lubrication, because this is your air seal, and without it you've got nothing. And there's bits of aluminium swarf in there, so I'd highly recommend stripping this down and cleaning it if you've just bought Specna arms, and giving it a once over. So let's pop this seal, this O-ring off here. Have a look, see, yeah, there's bits of metal on it, which is not what we want. Now I'm sure the gun isn't failing and it's not falling apart, that's not where the metal's coming from. I'd say this is from the manufacturing process. So let's give that a clean. I'll put some fresh silicone grease on there. So let's get this piston. So we've got a metal rack, which is nice to see. Hopefully it's glued in place as well. I can't actually tell. But yeah, it looks good quality. And we've got the guides, and we've got the toughness off the end. So if I had a look at something like an SHS version, this is a brand new one out the box, as you can see. Let's have a look, see how they compare in quality. If you look at this and you look at this, they're very similar. Okay, this one's been lightened, but other than that, they're incredibly similar. I think the teeth are a little broader on this. Fractionally, yeah, there's fractionally wider tooth rack on there, but yeah, certainly comparable. Nothing to worry about. This is, so we've got quite a bit of a cutout on there, but yeah, whatever. I'll wait for another project. So in the inside of here, we've got bearing guides for the spring. So that means when your spring's in there, it can turn easily without getting bound up. So all good. So let's clean this off, give this a wipe down. So we don't like bits of swarf on anything. There's a bit of wear on the edge there. Take this O-ring out. Very delicate little O-ring, so just be careful of this. There is a bit of damage on this. That is not good. Okay, first things first. If we have a look at this O-ring, you can actually see there's some damage to it. I'm going to have to replace that. That is not something I want to see in a brand new gun. So it's essentially doing nothing. If we look at the mainsail, we have a look at that now. That's absolutely fine. There's no problems with that. A little bit of swarf on the edge, but otherwise that's absolutely fine. So all things being equal, it's not too bad. It's not saying no horror stories. Everything looks okay. And again, we've got nozzle now. Something interesting to note with this. If you look inside there, so look at this. Yeah, I thought for a second I thought there was no O-ring, but there is actually an O-ring in there. I can see it. So that's fine. It actually doesn't look like there's one when I look at it, but yeah, there is an O-ring. That's fortunate. So let's just put these seals and see what the air seal on it was like. And we'll just put some lubrication on there. For lubrication, I use this, which is just a normal sort of plumber's silicone grease. You can spend a lot of money on specialist airsoft greases, or you can get stuff like this, which is exactly the same. So we'll put some coating of grease on the O-ring. Put this back on. We'll use this nasty O-ring for now, just so we can, because I haven't got a spare on me at the moment. I'll go back and find one, because I keep them in my garage. I'll just put that on there for now. So this gives us an idea how it was a standard. Sorry if I keep dropping out a shot on here, it's actually quite difficult to do. Maybe need a better camera setup. So, let's get this in here. Let's see what kind of air seal we've got. Okay, that's a good air seal. You can see. Certainly no problems there, so well done, Specna. It's a good job so far. Let's try it with the nozzle on and my piece of plastic to get an idea of how good the seal is. So first of all, we'll put it on like that. We'll try the air seal. Yep, that's good. Putting quite a lot of force on that, so let's try it without the nozzle all the way down, because that's not the natural place for it to be when you fire a shot. So we put this piece of plastic on the end to represent the tappet plate. A little bit of air letting through as normal, but not bad. That's actually not bad, believe it or not. Perhaps could be slightly better, I'd say. Maybe the O-ring in the actual nozzle's not fantastic, but we're still getting good FPS out of it, so I'm not too worried. And finally, we're going to have a look at the actual cylinder head, if I can get it out. Yep, I can. So again, that's a double O-ring, so that's good. All good news, and it's actually quite well lubricated, so where some parts weren't, that one's actually okay. We've got a soft rubber pad on the inside to absorb some of the impact, which is actually very soft. So it's almost like a sorbothane pad, which I don't particularly use those, but I know a lot of people do. Okay, so next up, we're going to tidy up the gearbox, clean it out, make sure there's no swarf in any of the parts where there's moving, the areas where there's moving parts even. So we'll clean it out. As you can see, there's been a bit of wear on this area up here, so we just give it a bit of a tidy up with some very fine sandpaper or glass paper, and then we'll get it back together. Now, one thing with this, guys, when I'm doing this, I'm not taking metal off. I'm literally just polishing where it touches inside of the gearbox. And I'm getting rid of casting imperfections. That's all it is. I'm not trying to widen it or take bits of metal off. And you need a very, very fine sandpaper for that, or glass paper. I think that's, what is it? It's P1500. It's very, very fine stuff. So all I'm doing is taking out any kind of casting imperfections, taking these sharp edges off, things like that. It's not about taking metal off, so please don't go attacking it with a coarse sandpaper. Now, you can actually polish the insides of these if you want. I've done it with other guns and it seems to work pretty well, but at that point you're looking at very marginal gains for a sort of a highly upgraded airsoft gun. I don't think at this level it's really a massive improvement, but you know, if you feel good about doing it, you know, if you like the look of it and you like getting every last little bit out of there, then why not? But just bear in mind, you don't want to go mad with this. You just want to make sure it's smooth and there's no bits to take chunks out of the plastic piston. Put these back in. I'm going to try and see what the actual shimming is like. Give us an idea of whether it's any good or whether we've got to do something with it. Okay, so these are our gears at the moment. You can see if you're looking there, there's quite a bit of movement in them. I prefer gears to be loose as opposed to tight. So if we get on the back here, have a look inside, you can see there is some movement there. So there's a little bit. It's spinning freely, but I've seen better shim jobs. The same with this one. So we'll see about that and this one. But before we decide what we're going to do with these, I just want to put the motor in, and I'll show you exactly what I mean by that. So now the motor's in, you can see how much backlash there is on here. So you get the tweezers, a little bit of movement, nothing horrific, but more importantly down here as well, it's actually not bad. We just need to see where the motor actually sits. Now I can't probably show this on camera, but with this gun you can actually see it through here. You can actually look through there with a light and you can get an idea of where the motor's sitting actually on the gear. So what you want is to get as many of the teeth biting as possible, but without it being too deep or too shallow. Okay, so interestingly, this bottom gear is absolutely fine. I've had a look inside with I've got a magnifying glass so I can see in, and 3/4 of the actual motor gear is engaged, and that's absolutely fine, not a problem. There's very little backlash of it, but more importantly, it's not moving around because the motor's holding it in place. So the shimming there, I'm not too worried about, that's absolutely fine. And it's not touching the inside of the gearbox either. One thing though is up here, we've still got the issue with quite a lot of movement on the shimming. So if we do that again to make it more so you can see it on the camera, so it push across. For me that's a little bit too much, so what I am going to do, just put a couple of shims on there to try and stop quite so much lateral movement even. The same, that one's actually not too bad, but we'll have a look at it when it's apart and try and see where the gears are actually sitting in comparison with what teeth are made. If you look in the back here though, you can't see if that's in the bottom position. Yeah, that's no good. So if you look at that in there, you can see here, I can get my tweezers into a good position. You can see where my tweezers are in there. Get in the light. Where they're meeting the gears. Now, if this one's all the way across there and that one's all the way across there, there's literally only a couple of millimeters of gears holding on there. Now, if I push this one back, suddenly it's in just the right place. See, so it's actually holding on to a lot more of the teeth. It gives much better engagement. Now, you don't want too much engagement, but you don't want too little. See what I mean? So that's out. and then back in again. We're not even quite there. So that's back in. Look again. Back out. So that's not great for me. And the same way, if we try and move this one, you can bring it across and it's not so bad again now. That's back across. So what we're going to do is get it so it's in the same place all the time. It'll have a little bit of movement either way, and that's absolutely fine. You don't want them too tight. At the same time, you don't want them flopping around all over the place. So we're going to put a couple of shims in just to try and improve it and see where we go from there. Okay, so I'm happy with the shims there and the way they are, and I'll just show you how they're meshed. So this is how the shims are now, or the gear should I say. I'm happy with the engagement. Now there is a little bit of movement. Now you may notice there's virtually no gap here, but I'm not really worried about that, because as soon as the motor comes in and contacts, it just lifts it slightly up to about there, which is where I want it. Now I could shim that, but there's not really much point, because it's nice to have the choice to bring the motor in a little bit more if you want. So what you can do, if you have them shimmed really tight on here, as you move your motor in and out, it can really put a lot of strain on it. You can really hear it. So I always leave this one a little tiny bit more movement to allow the gear just to, if you bring it in a little bit too far, it just lifts it slightly, and it saves any kind of screeching and nasty noises from your motor and your gears. This one sat down, this has got about not even half a millimeter's movement laterally, but it's just enough so it engages in here. So we've got sort of 3/4 of the way engagement. If this moves across a tiny bit, which it can do, this can still go with it, and they can move together. And when the case is on, it sounds really sweet, and they're spinning. Although before they were technically less tight because the shimming wasn't right, when the case is on there, they spin much freer, much nicer, and for much longer, which is great. But now you may notice there's a lot of people on there going, you haven't done your motor height right, you haven't tested it properly. No, I haven't, because I didn't need to. If you do need to do that, the way to do it is to take these two out, leave that one in, put your gearbox into your grip like so. You can then take your motor, fit it into the grip, into there, and you can see exactly how far it's protruding into the gearbox. And you can even mark it if you want. This is protruding in to about there, so that's where it lifts the gear, and that's fine. I mean, you know, ideal, if the perfect word, you could have it there, but remember, for every bit you lift it, put it in, you lift the gear. And some gearboxes, if you try and set it to there, it'll be too tight, because there's not enough room in the gearbox, even without shims, to take that position. So you have to be real careful of that and be mindful of it. So sometimes I like to leave that a little bit loose, just so as you take it in, it just lifts the gear up slightly. And this one's sitting, well, it's sitting about there from what I could see through the window at the back. and I'm more than happy with that. So we're going to look at greasing the gears. So when I opened this up, the gears were pretty dry, but the actual inside of the gearbox was greased, which is sort of these areas, and that's not much use to me. So we're going to take these out again, and we're going to give it a spray. Now the inside of here I just spray with it's basically just a lubricant, high performance machine lubricant with a bit of PTFE in. I just spray the inside of here with that, just let it soak in. You don't need anything more than that, because if your gears are grinding on the shell, then you've got a problem. They're not set up right. The actual gears themselves, I've given them a spray of this already. So I gave just a quick squib around there, either side, nothing special, just a tiny bit, and then I get a toothbrush and just smear it in. That's all you need. You don't need to be going crazy. Careful not to lose your shims like I just did. That was not a good idea, because then you'll have to start over again. So just let that soak in, and on top of that I also put a tiny bit of lithium grease, and I do mean small amounts here. We don't want great daubs of grease going on there. So for this part I use this lithium grease, and this is actually from a mountain bike. This is grease I used on my mountain bike. It's just a standard lithium grease. It's quite old now, but it still does the job. And I literally just put small amounts of this on. We don't need a lot of this grease. So put a little bit on all around. Now these are a bit wet actually because I've just sprayed them. So give them a bit of a wipe down. So I've already sprayed them once I did it off camera. So let's get some lithium grease on the brush. We just put it on around the gears. We don't have to go crazy with this stuff. You just want a good coating. Just think, if you've smeared great lumps of this stuff on, it's just going to clog up your gearbox. And then if you put something like gate tightener or an Aster in there that uses what they call optical sensor, then what you're going to find is you're going to bung up your optical sensors and you're going to have lots of faults, because your gears are absolutely plastered in grease and it's flinging all over the place. Not so much of a problem for this one because I've got a standard trigger unit in, but I still don't want grease on the trigger unit. So even that on there is a bit too much grease, so I'll just wipe that off. Give it a once over. And you want it on the faces that are likely to just kiss into each other. They're quite sharp gears. In the past I have just taken the edges off these, but then they should wear down. They are brand new gears. I don't particularly want to do that at the moment. So a little bit of grease on there, and we'll start putting it back together. So you've got the PTFE spray in the inside, and what we're going to do first is start putting the cabling back in. Okay guys, one thing, just as I was putting this back together, I realised why that O-ring was damaged. That's because the inside of the cylinder has got a nasty sharp edge to it inside there. And I don't like that. That's actually where the damage to that small O-rings come from. So we're going to do something about that, because we're going to be in the same situation. And to do that, I'm literally going to use something, I would usually use a deburring tool. I haven't actually got one on me at the moment, so I'm going to get some of this very fine sandpaper from the outside. Don't do the inside. Whatever you do, you don't want to start sanding the inside of your cylinder if you can help it. We're just going to try and polish off these nasty burrs. Because we just don't want to have sharp edges on the inside of our cylinder. Sharp edges and seals and O-rings don't usually go well together. So we're just going to file it off, tidy that up a bit. Okay guys, one thing, don't over tighten these screws in here. If you do, you're going to distort the base of your grip, and that's where your motor sits, and you really don't want that distorted because it'll kick your motor off in all kinds of directions, so just be aware of that. That's good. Well, to me, that sounds a little bit better. Not quite as screechy, slightly quieter. Rate of fire is probably about the same. Trigger response is probably about the same, but it just sounds a tiny bit smoother, and that's literally just for maintenance. We didn't do anything out of the ordinary. We didn't put any new parts in. We didn't upgrade anything. It was simply just maintenance and nothing more. And I'm happy with the result. What we'll do now is we'll chrono it and just see what it's putting out. I think it'll still be over the FPS limits because I haven't changed the spring. However, the spring was a little bit compressed. So we'll see. We'll try it out and have a look. And if it is over, we'll try an M100. Okay then guys, so what we're going to do is find out if this is any more consistent or if the FPS has dropped a little since the spring had been compressed. It'll be interesting to actually see what's going on. So let's have a look. 374, 371, 369, 370, 375, 371, 370, 371. So it's pretty consistent actually, it's not bad at all. However, it's way over. So what we're going to do is we're going to pop this spring out and we're going to put an M100 in. We're going to see exactly what we get. Okay, so I've just put that M100 spring in, and this truly is a quick change spring. It took all of 3 minutes to do, and that's the old spring there. So let's see what we've got out of this. Ooh, let's bring this around a bit. I'll fire straight into it. Three, 4, 1, 3, 5, 2, 3, 5, 0, 3, 4, 3, 3, 4, 6, 3, 4, 3, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 5, 3, 4, 6, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, 8. That's pretty consistent. So rate of fire is 1120. Okay then guys, so there you have it. That was the rebuild of the gearbox, and with a little bit of shimming work and also just getting a bit more lube into that cylinder, we've made a little bit of a difference to it. It was a shame that that 1.0 ring was damaged. It was damaged because of the burr on the inside of the cylinder, so that's something to think about. If you've got one of these yourself, it might be worth just stripping it down or taking it to somebody who can do it for you, giving it a once over, giving it a grease, setting up those shims, and it'll come back better than ever. And that's the reality of it, really. That's the key to this, is just to do those little things that they don't have time to do in the factory because they're putting these things out as fast as they can. We've improved the consistency. Once we got that M100 spring in, we got this FPS down to where we want it rather than up around the 370. It does prove that it's got a good air seal, because with the I think it's an M120 spring coming in these as standard, it's obviously shooting too hot. The M100, we just sat nicely around the 340s. There were a couple that jumped up, but generally the consistency was around 6 FPS, which is a big improvement over what you'd have seen in my comparison video, and it's actually better than my 4/6 now. So that's a big up for the Orion gearbox. It just needs finishing off, in my opinion. It's worth stripping them down. I think you need to give them that little pre-use service. If you don't, the gun's not going to break in 5 minutes. But things like burrs on the inside of the actual cylinder, come on, you know, Specna arms, you can do better than that, because that's the kind of thing that will damage seals and ultimately give you a bad reputation for reliability. If people have taken these out and they fail within the first few games because they split an O-ring and it comes off, you know, it's not the best way. So something as simple as deburring the inside of a cylinder, it's only going to enhance your reputation for making good quality, reliable guns. And I'm a big advocate of Specna arms, as you well know if you watch this video. I think they make fantastic M4s. So I don't want to see them get damaged by little things like that, because essentially the gearbox is solid, it's really good, it just needs a bit of TLC to get the best out of it and to make it last longer. And then once you've done that, I have no worries at all about the gearbox. It'll last forever, even in this setup now with an 11.1. So Specna arms, you know, if you're out there, if you're listening, I reckon that'd be a good bit of advice. Other than that, the gun's well built. The quick change spring system is a genuine quick change spring. It took 3 minutes exactly to change the spring over from the M120 to the M100. So that was good. I haven't done anything with the hop. I will put a Maple Leaf Macron rubber and an Omega nub in there at some point, probably before I take it out. But other than that, I'm really happy with it. It's snappy, it's consistent, and it's really good. So all in all, a good first opening of the gearbox. I think if you know what you're doing with these things, you're happy taking them apart, you're confident we're working on them, then you can't go wrong. If you're a little bit worried about taking them apart, take it somewhere else. Just get them to give it a service. Make sure it's a trusted tech and get them to do the work for you. So yeah, really good. I'm quite impressed. So that is the end of the E07 series, or certainly the Specna arms comparison series for now. So we'll be moving on to a few other projects soon. I'm looking at a Dragunov SVU. If you're interested in that, I'm doing a DMR build with it, so that should be quite good fun. I've also got an HK45 CT on the way, and that will be interesting to have a look at, and a few other things in the pipeline. So stay tuned, and I'll be back soon. Thanks for watching. See you again.